One of the greatest pain points of being a researcher is to read through dozens and dozens of paper, trying to sift through the noise to get to the signal. Hello everyone, my name is Nick and I am a physician in Hong Kong in my first year of training in neurology. I'm also trying to kickstart my part-time career as a researcher, and so this is the channel where I hope to gather my insights and learnings so that I can share with you my journey. How to read a research paper effectively is probably one of the most frequently asked questions for people like me starting out on the journey. And I realized that it is actually not the correct question to ask, because the end goal in reading research papers is not to read them, but rather to understand them. So the question should be, how does one understand a research paper effectively? The purpose is to pick out the gems that echo the questions that you're asking, that challenges your conventional perspectives, and inspire you to push even further beyond the edges of the field that you're in. And today I'll be explaining the 4-step fundamental that I've been using myself to grab the gist of the research papers that I've been reading. But before we go on to explain in detail the 4-step method, first you have to understand the why. Why are you even reading this paper? Why is this paper on your desk or on your computer? Why do you think you can get what you need from this paper? Is it to get a general sense of the state of knowledge within your field? Is it to identify a specific answer to a question that you're asking? Or is it to just simply gather information available in order to perform a literature review? Once you know your why, you can then tailor your approach of understanding the research paper in front of you in a personalized manner. 4-step fundamental method consists of 4 progressive steps in which we try to extract the information that echoes our why. Number 1, the title. Number 2, the abstract. Number 3, the figures. And number 4, the discussion. And I'll be breaking down each of these 4 steps using a real-life example with a paper that I'm reading currently. So here we see a paper recently published in the Journal of Neurology regarding the topic of ischemic stroke, more specifically how a clinician is to decide on the treatment plan in a patient who has already suffered a stroke while on supposedly optimal treatment. To give a bit of context, when a patient suffers from a stroke, it means that one of the blood vessels in the brain has been occluded, leading to the death of these brain cells because there is not enough blood supply towards that region. A particular subset of patients are more susceptible to stroke because they have a condition called atrial fibrillation, in which their heart is contracting in an irregular manner, leading to the formation of blood clots in the heart, which could subsequently dislodge and travel up to the brain, blocking the vessels in the brain. These patients are usually put on medications called anticoagulants, or also known as blood thinners, which reduces the risk of a clot forming inside the heart, thereby reducing the risk of a stroke. Now, the clinical dilemma arises when the patient is already on blood thinners but are still suffering from strokes. And there is no clear direction as to what a clinician is to do at this point, whether he or she should change the blood thinner to another drug within the same class or to another drug of a different class, whether an additional medication should be added on to prevent further stroke occurrences. And so this is my why for reading this paper. It's because I myself have reached this dilemma in my daily practice, and I'm seeking a specific answer to my clinical question. So the first step would be to look at the title. I know this might come as a surprise to a lot of people because this is somewhat obvious, but the fact is that we always skip over the title. It is basically the central concept within the research paper, encapsulated in one single sentence. Whether or not this corresponds to our why is one of the biggest determinants whether we should even continue reading on. Here we see that the title, as it states, Association of Alternative Anticoagulant Strategies and Outcomes in Patients with Ischemic Stroke while taking a direct oral anticoagulant. That really corresponds to my why. Now the second step would be the abstract. And I think this is the second most important area to yield the best results in understanding the paper, because it extracts the gist from various components within any research paper. We can understand the research question that the authors are proposing, how they have come about to answer the research question, the results, and ultimately the discussion regarding their findings. And in fact, the background of this paper matches perfectly with what I'm trying to answer as well, is that the initial step in starting patients on blood thinners is clear. What isn't clear is after these patients suffer from a stroke while on optimal medication, what do you do next? We understand that the authors have used a population-based retrospective cohort study in which patients are stratified into different groups. The first group would be patients on new blood thinners, switching over to another new blood thinner, patients who are originally on new blood thinners switching over to old blood thinner called warfarin, and a third group where patients are kept on the same new blood thinners. A series of analyses have been performed and ultimately coming to the conclusion that the risk of a recurrent stroke is the lowest when patients are maintained on the same new blood thinner that they have been using. This contradicts the conventional thinking. If a patient experiences another stroke while on a particular medication, it means that that medication has failed and there is the tendency to switch medications. After the second step of the abstract, it's very easy to just go through the entire paper one by one. But right here, I would like to just stop you in your tracks, and I think I'd jump straight to the third step, which are the figures. This is another very overlooked, underappreciated part of research paper. I think this phenomenon arises from the bias that we think reading is with regards to words per se, or that there is no shortcut when it comes to understanding a subject towards a professional level researchers should be aiming at. But the fact is that these figures are constructed, designed, and carefully calibrated by the authors to convey a certain message. This goes back to the requirement by many journals. A paper is only allowed to contain a certain number of figures, around 3 to 4, which forces the authors to really distill the concepts that they're trying to portray down to 4 figures only. This is why these figures are so packed of value when we're trying to understand the gist, simply because they're designed to achieve this function. And skipping over the figures, as I myself or many fellow researchers that I know are doing, actually is detrimental towards effectively understanding the text. As in this paper, the first figure demonstrates succinctly how the researchers carried out the study as a retrospective cohort study, the different groups, how they are stratified, why they are stratified the way that they are. The second figure is a table stating the different characteristics of the subjects included in the study itself. This provides a really good overview of the type of patients included, whether they are corresponding to the patients that I'm seeing in my daily practice, which extrapolates into the applicability of the results by this paper. Now then we come to table number 2, which is a summary of the outcome comparisons between the different treatment strategies. We can clearly see that keeping the same new blood thinners is beneficial in reducing stroke recurrences. And as you can see, this really summarizes the results of the paper. And we just did that in around, 2 minutes? And if we're still interested to read further, I think last but not least element would be the discussion. Part of the discussion would be a repetition of the title, the abstract, and the figures. Of course, if you like to have another go at the same concepts again, this would be the chance. But I would like to draw your attention particularly to the part where the authors talk about limitations in your study, since this would allow you to understand the thought process of the authors, how they reflect upon what they have done, the results that they have found. What are the shortcomings in your study design, and how the study design may have rendered the results inaccurate. This would shed light on how we interpret the paper as it is and how we apply the knowledge gained from reading this paper in our daily practice. Another element to look out for would be the questions that have remained unanswered by the study design. This will help you understand further research gaps in the field. There you have it. These are the 4 steps of the 4-step funnel method. It's important to think of this method literally as a funnel, where we progressively get a deeper and deeper understanding of what the authors are trying to tell us. At the top of the funnel would be the title, where it captures the entirety of the findings. It is the broadest overview. It really helps us to decide whether or not to go on. And if we do, we narrow down to the abstract, which is a further elaboration of different parts of the research paper. If we're still interested, we can then get to the figures. And then last but not least, at the end, the narrowest part would be the discussion, understanding more about the thinking behind the author's study design findings and what they think of what lies in the future for the field. So I hope this video has been helpful for you, and if there are any comments or questions, please let me know in the comments section below, and I hope to see you in the next one.